Thank you for staying with me for part 2. We're picking up in Daniel chapter 9 at this portion of the scripture where it says, the people of the ruler who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Well, as believers, if this ruler was speaking of Yeshua, as a believer, we follow him. And it says the people of the ruler, meaning if that were true, that would mean this would be talking about us, that we as believers would destroy the city, meaning Jerusalem, and the sanctuary. Well, we are clearly commanded to pray for Jerusalem, to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, to pray for his people. So we would never, as believers in Yeshua, go in to destroy the city of Jerusalem or the sanctuary. So that's a clear indication that this ruler, or the people of this ruler who will come, are going to do that. We would never do that as true believers. Also, if we go back up, we see that the Anointed One was cut off after the 62 sevens, and we know that there's 1 7 left. It doesn't say he was cut off after 62 and a half sevens. We know that the first 69 sevens, the 7 sevens and the 62 sevens, equaling 69 sevens, that they were sequential and that one right after the other, and they were actually groups of 7. It does not make sense now to take the very last 7 and divide it into 2. He has shown us that these 7s are actually groups of 7s. He didn't say 69 7s and then 2 groups of 3.5 and 3.5. There's a final group of consecutive 7 years. So that's important. So when we see the people of the ruler who will come, we see a new ruler introduced. And we see what would happen. The city was destroyed and the sanctuary was destroyed. Was that destroyed by believers? And this happened in 70 AD. No, it was destroyed by the Roman army. And more specifically, I believe it was the 10th Legion of the Roman army, who were made up of Seleucids. Seleucids were like the Greek Assyrian people. And this makes complete sense because the Antichrist is called the Assyrian. And because these people were Assyrian, who specifically were Assyrian, even though, yes, they were in the Roman army, they were Seleucid or Assyrian, the Greek Assyrian people. So this lines right up. We can know for sure that the Antichrist is indeed the Assyrian. It says, the end will come like a flood. War will continue until the end. So even though there will be a false peace in the end, there will still be wars. We see that wars are determined to the very, very end. And desolations have been decreed. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. Again, there are some people who believe this he is speaking of Yeshua, but Yeshua was cut off after the 62 weeks and the 7 weeks before that, the 69 weeks. This is talking about the final 7, and this he is referring back to the very last person in this chronological sequence that was mentioned. And the very last person, if we go up, we'll just, we'll see here, it's not, we just back up, nothing. The ruler. The he is the ruler. So the he definitely is referring back to the ruler. And it says, he will confirm a covenant with me for 1 7, this ruler who's going to come. And in the middle of 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. And on a wing of the temple, he will set up abomination that causes desolation until the end is poured out on him. Now, some of you, my brothers and sisters, believe that this is referring to Yeshua's crucifixion and that ended the sacrifices and that he was killed. This is not what it's referring to. This is definitely talking about the Antichrist, and that is shown in other places in Daniel. So we need to look at more than chapter 9. I'm not saying that you haven't, but maybe you have been more focused on this passage and are forgetting that this is mentioned at least three other times that I can think of, and it's always referring to the Antichrist. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of the temple, he will set up an abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. So let's go look at one of these other passages that I'm referring to. The first one is Daniel chapter 11, verses 30 through 33. And it says, then he will turn back, and this is talking about the Antichrist. When you read it, it's very clear it's talking about the Antichrist. We have no doubt about that. This is definitely not talking about Yeshua. Then he will turn back and vent his fury against the holy covenant. Notice here, it's not just talking about any covenant. Here he's talking about, he's angry against the holy covenant, not the 7-year covenant that he confirmed or strengthened. It says, he, meaning the Antichrist, will return and show favor to those who forsake the holy covenant. Well, that's definitely not talking about Yeshua. This one is and he's returning from a battle, just so you know. It's not talking about Yeshua's return from heaven. It's very clear when you read the whole passage. He's returning from a battle, and he's angry. He's going to show favor to those who forsake the holy covenant. Now, some of you who are once saved, always saved, and you think that you can be in the holy covenant and not break it, not forsake it, or lose your salvation, you believe once saved, always saved. This is clear that there will be some people who are believers, they believe, but they're going to choose to forsake the holy covenant. Okay, and his, meaning the Antichrist, his armed forces will rise up to desecrate the temple fortress and will abolish the daily sacrifice. Then they will set up the abomination that causes desolation. So here we see two things that we saw in the first passage. The daily sacrifice is abolished. In the first passage, I said the sacrifice. This gives us a little bit more information. And we know it's the same thing because it's tied directly to the abomination that causes desolation. It's at a same time period, which we'll see over and over and over. These two things are tied together. The abolishing of the daily sacrifice and the abomination that causes desolation. So then they will set up the abomination that causes desolation. With flattery, he will corrupt those who have violated the covenant. But the people who know their God will firmly resist him. So the Antichrist is the one who desecrates the temple fortress and abolishes the daily sacrifice and has the abomination of desolation set up. This lines up exactly with Daniel's 9:27 he. Let's go back and look at Daniel 9:27. It says, he will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of the temple he will set up an abomination that causes desolation, until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. So this is clearly talking about the same person, the same man, and there's more scriptures. We'll continue to look at some more scriptures about this. Also notice that the covenant here, this is not an eternal covenant. This is a 7-year covenant. This is a covenant that's confirmed with many for 1 7. This is not an eternal covenant. This is a 7-year covenant, or a covenant that's confirmed for only 7 years. Also, he is going to, we know from other places that this covenant will be broken in the middle. Yeshua would never break a covenant. He would never break a covenant. Okay, let's go down. Okay, to another passage, and actually we'll just stop here and we'll go to the next video, and I'm going to show you yet another verse showing who exactly is the one who abolishes the sacrifice and sets up the abomination of desolation. So please stay with me for part 3.